Have you ever stopped to think about what a hug truly carries? Not that quick greeting hug, but that hug that squeezes tightly, that holds as if life depended on it, that says everything the mouth can't pronounce. Today, I'm going to tell you a story about such a hug. A hug given in a hospital corridor between two people who together built a multi-million-dollar empire, but who, at the most critical moment of their lives, discovered they had lost something far more valuable than money. Right in the comments if you believe it's possible to rebuild trust after years of living a lie. Helena Montero was the kind of woman who could silence meeting rooms when she entered. At 52, she commanded a real estate conglomerate that had reshaped the landscape of 3 Brazilian capitals. Her businesses moved billions. Her name opened doors that most people didn't even know existed. She had everything our society teaches us to value: power, recognition, a bank account with more zeros than we can imagine. But in that cold corridor, with the smell of antiseptic clinging to her throat and the clock ticking down every second like a sentence, none of that mattered. Because there, holding the trembling hands of Raphael, the man with whom she had shared 23 years of her life, Helena discovered a brutal truth. You can gain the whole world and still lose your own soul in the process. Have you ever experienced this? Have you ever looked back and realized that the choices that brought you here weren't exactly the choices you're proud of? Raphael was not just Helena's husband. He was the talented architect who gave shape to her dreams, the sensitive man who saw beauty where she saw only opportunity for profit. But he was also the silent accomplice to every questionable decision, every moral shortcut she took to reach the top. And this silence, over time, transformed into the deepest betrayal one can commit against oneself. The surgery that awaited Raphael on the other side of that door carried real risks. A brain tumor discovered too late, neglected because there was always something more urgent in her business that he needed to resolve. But what Helena didn't imagine was that, the night before, he had revealed a secret that would change everything. A secret kept in boxes of old papers, documents she thought had been destroyed years ago, proof of every wrong choice she made in building her empire. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you. For decades, Raphael had kept evidence: fake contracts, bribe receipts, incriminating emails. Everything organized, dated, and noted down. He confessed that, for years, he planned to denounce her, to hand her over to the authorities as a way to clear his conscience for having been a silent accomplice to so much injustice. But he didn't, and the reason will make you question everything you think about love, forgiveness, and redemption. That hug in the hallway wasn't just fear of losing someone in a risky surgery. It was the weight of 23 years of choices, of unspoken secrets, of love that survived even when it shouldn't have. It was Helena finally understanding that power and money can buy almost everything in this life except peace of mind. Accept the respect of the one you love. Accept the chance to look in the mirror and recognize the person looking back at you. And as the operating room door closed, taking Raphael inside, Helena was left alone with a question she had avoided her entire life. When you lose your integrity on the path to success, is there still a way back? Is it still possible to start over? What happened in the following hours changed not only their destiny, but revealed a truth about human nature that you may never have stopped to consider. Before I continue this story, I need to tell you something. If this topic resonates with you, if any part of what you've heard so far has touched on something you've also experienced or felt, leave a comment below about what impacted you the most. It could be a word, a phrase, a reflection. I read every comment, and they show me that we are not alone in our internal battles, in our doubts about the choices we make. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this type of content, with stories that go beyond entertainment and touch on what really matters: our humanity. And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, now's the time. Click the subscribe button, because every week I bring you stories like this, revealing the human side behind power, wealth, and appearances. Stories that make us question, feel, and perhaps see our own lives in a different way. And leave a like too, because it shows me that you want more of this kind of content, that you value this space we're building together here. Now, let me tell you what Helena did during those 6 hours of surgery. She drove down to the hospital parking lot, locked herself in the car, and, for the first time in years, allowed the silence to completely envelop her. There were no meetings to lead, no urgent decisions only she could make, no masks to wear. There, in that enclosed space that smelled of leather and air conditioning, she was just a woman facing the possibility of losing everything that truly mattered. And you know what's most interesting? In that moment of absolute truth, Helena realized that the fear of losing Raphael was different from the fear of losing the company, the money, the status. It was a fear that pierced her chest, that took her breath away, that made each second seem like an eternity. The box containing the documents was on the bench next to her. Those papers represented years of choices she had justified with the cold logic of business, manipulated contracts, bids won with backroom deals, families evicted because expensive lawyers know how to twist the law in favor of whoever pays more. Each page was proof of the transformation she had undergone over the years, of how ambition can erode our moral compass so slowly that we don't even realize when we stop recognizing who we've become. Helena opened the box completely and read each document, not as a businesswoman calculating damages, but as a human being facing the consequences of her own choices. And that's when the hidden truth came to light. She hadn't built an empire. She had built a gilded prison, and Raphael had been the only one who had the courage to show her the bars. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because to understand what was happening in that parking lot, we need to go back in time. 23 years earlier, Helena was a different person. She had inherited a modest construction company from her father and carried that sparkle in her eyes of someone who still believes that success and happiness can go hand in hand. It was on one of these first large projects that Raphael entered her life. He was the architect of a controversial development, a tower that would displace hundreds of families from an old community. And when he presented the project, Helena saw something in his eyes that touched her: hesitation. He had talent to spare, but he was trapped between his ideals and the need to survive in a world that doesn't forgive those who choose purity. The romance began like this, in meetings that lasted longer than necessary, at dinners where they discussed ethics while drinking $1,000 bottle wine, on trips too. Construction sites where they made love in hotel suites while, down below, workers erected buildings they could never afford. In the early years, Raphael protested against her most questionable decisions. They argued until the early hours of the morning, she defending how the world works and he insisting that there were other ways. But as their standard of living rose, the penthouse became larger, the cars more luxurious, the trips more frequent. His voice fell silent, and that silence became the greatest betrayal he committed against himself. But the worst was yet to come, because the night before the surgery, Raphael asked to talk. Helena arrived home from the office after 11 o'clock at night, tired from a complicated negotiation, and found him sitting in the living room with a box of old papers beside him. The expression on his face was unlike anything she had seen in recent years. It had a firmness, a decisiveness that she no longer recognized in him, and when he began to speak, each word fell like a stone to her stomach. He had kept everything. Every fake contract, every illicit payment receipt, every incriminating email. Everything organized, dated, and noted with the precision of someone who documented it not out of hatred, but out of desperation to preserve some trace of integrity. Raphael confessed that for years he had planned to denounce her, to hand everything over to the authorities as a way to clear his own conscience for having been a silent accomplice to so much injustice. Imagine the impact of those words. The men she loved, who slept beside her every night, had spent years building a complete dossier against her. And then came the question that changed everything. Why didn't he do it? The answer was simple and devastating at the same time. Because he loved her. And because he realized that revenge wouldn't make him better than her, only more bitter. That revelation completely transformed the meaning of the hug in the hallway. It wasn't just fear of the surgery. It was the weight of years of unspoken truths of love that survived despite everything. And it was at that moment that Helena had to make the hardest choice of her life. Because when the operating room door closed and she was left alone in that corridor, something inside her broke. She went down to the parking lot, sat in the car and, for the first time in decades, turned off her cell phone that wouldn't stop vibrating with million-dollar offers and urgent decisions. None of that mattered anymore. The only thing that mattered was on the other side of that door, fighting for her life on an operating table. Helena opened the box of documents Raphael had kept for so many years and read everything. Each page was a mirror reflecting who she had become. Manipulated contracts, disguised bribes, families evicted without fair compensation. And for the first time, she didn't try to justify herself by saying that everyone does it or that's how the world works. She simply let the shame in, complete and devastating. That's when the change in mindset came. Helena realized she had gained the whole world, but lost her own soul in the process. And worse, she had dragged Raphael down with her in this fall. So she did something she never imagined she would do. She picked up the phone and started making calls. First to her lawyer, ordering him to prepare a voluntary complaint to the public prosecutor's office. Then to the financial director, instructing her to set aside funds to compensate all the families harmed over the years. She wasn't calculating how to minimize damages. She was doing what was right, regardless of the cost. But it remained to be seen if Raphael would survive to witness this transformation. And the 6 hours of surgery felt like 6 whole days. When the doctor finally left the room, Helena was standing in the hallway, her eyes red from crying alone in that car. The surgery had been successful. Raphael was alive. But the first few days were critical. And she didn't leave his side for a minute. She slept in an uncomfortable chair, refused to go home, and ignored all calls from company executives asking for urgent guidance. When Raphael finally opened his eyes, 5 days later, the first thing he saw was her face. And there was something different about that face, a piece he hadn't seen in years. With his voice still weak, he managed to whisper, "The box?" And Helena, holding his hand gently, told him everything, how she had delivered the documents to the public prosecutor's office, how she was preparing compensation for all the affected families, how she had decided to face the consequences of her own actions. Tears streamed down Raphael's face. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of recognition, of hope. In the following months, while he recovered, the empire Helena had built crumbled in a controlled manner. Investigations were opened, lawsuits were initiated, the penthouse and luxury cars had to be sold. She spent 2 years serving her sentence in a semi-open regime, and you know what's surprising? For the first time in decades, she slept at night without needing medication. Because finally there was peace of mind. Now comes the part that impacts me most in this story. When Helena was released from prison 2 years later, Raphael was waiting for her. They rented a modest apartment, without a privileged view, without a butler, without any of the things they used to have. He went back to working as an architect on social housing projects. She began giving lectures on business ethics, using her own trajectory as an example of how boundless ambition destroys everything we touch. And at night, when they embraced in that simple bed in that small apartment, the embrace was different. Because finally there was truth between them. Finally, there was dignity. That last hug in the hospital hallway wasn't a goodbye. It was a new beginning. The most painful, the most honest, and the truest of all. And you know why? Because some hugs carry everything that was never said. Secrets that now from within, choices that define destinies, love that insists on surviving even when it seems impossible. And we don't always get a second chance, but when it does, it often comes disguised as loss, pain, the collapse of everything we thought was important. So I ask you, do you believe that love can survive secrets and wrong choices? That it's possible to rebuild trust after so many betrayals? even emotional ones. If you've made it this far and this story touched you in some way, write in the comments, "This message was for me." I read each one, and it's incredible to realize that these stories resonate in so many different lives. And if you felt that these minutes here with me were worthwhile, leave a like. It shows me that this type of content makes sense to you, that it's worth continuing to bring stories like this. And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, this is your invitation. Every week I bring you stories that go beyond superficial entertainment. They are narratives that reveal the human side behind the power, the wealth, the appearances we see around us. Stories that make us reflect on who we are and who we want to be. Click on the subscribe button and come be a part of this community. There's a video over here that complements this topic in a way that will make you think even more. Click and continue reading there. See you soon.